This cryptogram provides a major clue to solving the world's greatest mystery, but the full answer lies in recognizing that the ancient pyramids all served a common purpose. Effectively, every pyramid worldwide was the centerpiece of a machine, all connected through solar technology. With that realization, and using a technique called reverse engineering, any engineer can work it out. "40 years ago, the solution was pretty much beyond belief. But time has caught up, and the defining evidence from NASA matches the data precisely, unlocking an answer as unmistakable as it is conclusive. Now, after thousands of years, we can reconstruct the full picture once more. This amateur video shows some of the early tests of a new form of propulsion to launch vehicles into space. Developed by NASA, the light craft is considered the future of low-cost flight technology. A beam of energy is focused to create temperatures beneath the craft hot enough to ionize a reaction medium. In the demonstration model, this medium is air, only one of many possibilities. Between pulses, air re-enters the chamber. The technology can use an extraordinary range of reaction mediums and a variety of energy sources: X-rays, microwaves, and even solar power. Laser energy from the ground is used to ionize the air beneath the craft, creating thrust in a fairly conventional way. Less obvious is that a second focus of energy ahead of the rising craft could also create lift. Rapid ionization explodes air outwards, momentarily creating a partial vacuum. Suitably timed, the effect can be harnessed to provide significant lift, as well as massively reducing atmospheric drag. Lake Marabo, the developer of the light craft, has proven the basic principles of the air spike. He has also suggested the possibility of totally powering a craft directly from a power satellite in low Earth orbit. However, this last proposal is a political time bomb, because it implies energy beams aimed toward the ground with power levels in excess of a megawatt per square meter. Because it spends half its time in Earth's shadow, a power satellite in low Earth orbit would be grossly inefficient. With the prospect of a death ray in space that could terrorize the whole planet, it raises immediate suspicions about its true purpose. However, there is an excellent solution that could well be acceptable to all, including the military. At the enormously greater altitude, an equatorial geosynchronous Earth orbit is a more viable option. The geo-orbit removes a lot of complexity and can supply almost uninterrupted energy, since the satellite is effectively stationary and remains in almost unbroken sunlight. Unlike a low Earth orbit, the tilted axis of the Earth ensures that a geosatellite remains in sunlight for most of the year. Only at the equinoxes in March and September does a geosatellite pass briefly through Earth's shadow each night. A number of agencies around the world, including NASA, have reduced proposals like these to place solar power satellites in geosynchronous Earth orbit to collect energy in space for our earthly needs. All would transmit microwaves to receivers on the ground around 6 kilometers in diameter, although the primary footprint would be far less, at around 1 kilometer. All propose also that the power be collected for conversion to electricity for distribution through the grid. It is also acknowledged that high-density beams could be redirected cost-effectively to distant communities, or be used to provide an extremely effective weapon for national defence, with minimum likelihood of its use being put to an aggressive role. However, few, if any, have acknowledged that reflective optics could also be used very efficiently to provide beamed energy for propulsion. With power received from space, all that would be required is a tall launch tower at the centre of the collector, which is precisely where the link can be made to the pyramids of our distant past. Far safer than the proposal for powering craft directly from space, in this system all potentially dangerous high-density beams are pointed skywards, almost eliminating public risk. Every element of the sophisticated use of this technology is laid out in exquisite detail in the historical remains at sites like Giza and Teotihuacan, each with its own special features and nuances of design. Compared to a tiny craft, a large stationary ground receiver is a relatively easy target, and collecting and retransmitting the energy to a craft directly overhead is far simpler. It is also far safer for those on the ground, as the beam densities can be kept at very low levels. All that is needed is a suitable focusing array of mirrors, with a launch tower at the centre, which is precisely where pyramids start to enter the picture. To focus the power received from orbit, ideally the reflector would be a parabolic dish. However, once the launch is achieved, the system needs adaptive optics to keep the craft in focus, and for this, a system based on a modified Fresnel lens is an obvious choice. For liftoff, the craft must be supported on a central tower at the focal point of the energy beam. The larger the collector, the higher the tower must be. Using microwaves, a step pyramid would maximize efficiency and could readily be enlarged as greater power is required. Hinged metal mirrors open out like petals to change the focal length as the craft lifts. The stepped tower design matches the earliest pyramids and mastabas in Egypt. Xos's pyramid was repeatedly enlarged, and many others, like the pyramid at Meydan, were eventually converted to the true pyramid shape. The reason for this is now clear. Whilst microwaves could still be used most effectively within a solar-powered system, the reverse is not so true. Converting to direct solar offers many advantages, but changes the design requirements of the central focusing unit. The low energy density of solar determines the need for a much larger collection area and a double reflection system to achieve the high temperatures required for liftoff. Even with a massive installation, solar is inevitably limited to a few thousand feet, the yellow section in the chart. But solar could also supply the basic power for a microwave system, and any effectively free acceleration would be highly significant. It is hard to define precisely the maximum size of a solar collector system, but about 1 square mile would come close. Banks of mirrors concentrate sunlight at the very tip of the pyramid. This area, directly beneath the craft, is called the Pyramidion, and the vertical beam from here forms the focus of the whole system. Light from the main reflection footprint is also important. These beams augment the primary beam by focusing slightly inwards. Further arrays contribute by direct reflection into the central column of heat. It would be reasonable to question what proof there might be of the existence of this long-destroyed collector system, but in fact the proof is quite substantial. As might be expected, it is a feature only found in association with the true pyramids, powered directly by solar energy. At every site, evidence has revealed a completely covered stone causeway that once joined the base of the individual pyramid to its entrance temple, generally on the banks of the Nile. The causeways protected visitors from being blinded by sunlight, and their length physically defined the size of each collector. Up to 800 meters long, the radius also gave the total energy of the launch system, producing figures closely matched by those from NASA. However, whilst it was conclusive, the evidence at Giza was also very involved, so although it seemed unlikely that other systems would produce any evidence more convincing, the possibility had to be investigated. In the event, the evidence at Teotihuacan was the most astounding found so far, enough to fully prove a final conclusion. As one of the larger pyramid complexes, with over 600 pyramids, this fabulous city of the gods reveals amazing technology to the limits of anything yet envisaged by modern science. The site dates from early in the Christian era, and is seen here from the top of the Moon Pyramid, the second of the two great pyramids at the site. The view looks south along the amazing Avenue of the Dead that stretches arrow straight toward the distant mountains. It is evident that energy collection systems were established across this plateau, and a massive insulated tunnel and a series of sluices controlled the distribution of microwaves to the individual launch pads. The tunnels and sluices are still major features of the site. The extraordinary tunnel beneath the Avenue of the Dead was from 45 to 90 meters wide and was totally lined with massive sheets of mica, two of which have been found one atop the other in the collapsed section of the tunnel shown here near the Sun Pyramid. The two slabs are 300 millimeters thick, more than 27 meters square, and they each weigh in excess of 600 tons. In a feat currently well beyond our present capabilities, hundreds of similar blocks of mica were imported from Brazil, 3,200 kilometers away, to be used throughout the site, buried in tunnels and under pyramids. Mica in this form is used almost exclusively as an electrical insulator. Just how and why it was brought to the site has until now remained as one of the greatest mysteries of our past, but in every way it is absolute confirmation of my theory. Within this collapsed section of tunnel, 6 of the massive sluices that once controlled the flow of microwaves can still be seen, and something of the extraordinary scale of their construction is shown by the tiny size of the people in the picture. Massive channels carved from bedrock and lined with mica once extended right around the Sun Pyramid and beneath the centre of the pyramid, where a large cavern has been discovered. It is 20 meters wide and shaped like a four-leaf clover, and contains what are described as large angled mirrors made of slate. A block tunnel leads 100 meters back from this chamber toward the Avenue of the Dead, and from both the internal chamber and the outer channel, stone ducts lead up inside the pyramid. It was long assumed this massive tunnel system was simply a vastly over-engineered drainage system, and until now no better explanation was on offer. Notwithstanding that I started my wider investigation looking for evidence of the use of microwaves or lasers, or possibly even X-rays, the evidence at Teotihuacan could hardly be more complete in its own right. If you are looking for reasons why the Avenue of the Dead is not a drainage system, you don't need to look too far. For a start, the tunnels are far too large for a drainage system, possibly 50 times larger than could reasonably be required on a dry mountain plateau. Then, the Avenue of the Dead actually crosses 2 rivers, as can clearly be seen on location maps. This is hardly what would be expected of a drainage system. The mica lining of the tunnels is fragile and useless in water. Granulated mica of this sort soaks up water and breaks up very readily. It is almost certainly a major reason the tunnels became blocked. Next, as any engineer can tell you, sluices are never used in a drainage system, especially in a system with a significant gradient. Water would simply flood over any sluice, or alternatively simply blow the top off the tunnel. And finally, there are no channels or inlets on the outside of the pyramid to collect water, and its shape would obviously shed water very easily. Clearly the pyramids were built for some very practical purpose, and in this the insulated tunnels provide many obvious clues. First, the mica is obviously of great importance, or it wouldn't have been imported all the way from Brazil. It also has unique properties as a microwave insulator, but no practical role known in construction. A large straight tunnel like this, insulated with mica, would be an ideal waveguide. Sluices are commonly used in distribution systems distributing fluids or gas, or possibly radiation. In this case, the distribution would be uphill toward the pyramids, which eliminates liquid as a possible option. And finally, a microwave guide channel may actually benefit from not having physical outlets. Since microwaves pass readily through many types of rock or quartz, a sealed system can be used to limit the potential of unwanted moisture causing explosive ionization. Such a system would have a carrying capacity in excess of 1 megawatt per square meter. Over 5,000 years, pyramid technology was introduced repeatedly, always in a similar fashion. In each region, simple platforms were enlarged many times to become major pyramids, with at least one eventually being extended to challenge the Great Pyramid in scale, surrounded within a radius of about 200 kilometers by as many as 10 to 20,000 other pyramids graded in size from small to very large. All the energy was initially beamed from space to collectors at the ground that focused the energy to a central point. Later innovations were made locally to boost the available power as far as was possible. The true pyramids extended to the limit, the use of solar energy to greatly reduce the dependence on microwaves beamed from space, but they became old technology within 100 years with the increased availability of microwave systems at the ground. The advanced technology at Teotihuacan was not unique. It was repeated in Bolivia in the Acapana pyramid at Tiahuanaco near Lake Titicaca. Once again described as a vastly over-engineered drainage system, the pyramid contains a vast and complex network of large tubes and ducting that all leads to a large sunken platform at the top of the pyramid. Ducting which appears to confirm yet another link within the global picture of this amazing technology. Returning to the Great Pyramid at Giza, there is one mystery there, as yet largely unaddressed, that for many is the only one they acknowledge on the subject. It relates to the extraordinary feat of its construction and obvious precision. Though its smooth outer casing was stripped off centuries ago, the Great Pyramid is still acknowledged as by far the most accurate major construction on Earth. After his landmark survey in 1883, Sir Flinders Petrie claimed that the sum of all errors would easily be covered by a single thumbprint. Each massive face is actually two planes, slightly angled, to meet a perfectly flat strip down the centre, and as the sun reveals at certain times, each plane is perfectly flat. But perhaps most startling are the blocks themselves. Over 2 million blocks of stone, averaging nearly 3 tons each, and yet so close they are only separated by the thinnest veneer of an unusual cement. Despite appearances, there is now clear evidence that the casing stones weren't natural rock at all. A detailed scientific analysis has revealed the stone to be artificial, a geopolymer, a mix of the natural agglomerated stone with around 10% of a synthetic zeolite binder. Being lighter and stronger than natural stone may partly explain why all the accessible stone was taken, leaving the core exposed. The joining cement is another geopolymer, a thin sealer coated on existing surfaces to prevent seepage while each new block set. A third geopolymer was coated over the entire outer surface. The most complex compound, it's a red mix of organic materials that include bone, a common ingredient of glue. It seems likely that a fourth geopolymer was used for some of the outer blocks of the core itself. But, somewhat ironically, though the simplest mix, present technology is unable yet to prove it as artificial. It is probable that formwork panels were also made of a geopolymer stone. Set with care, the artificial mantle stone could be made in situ with absolute precision. The mix was simply poured in and allowed to set. The removal of the panels revealed a perfect finish. Quick, simple, and perfectly accurate. A thin coating of sealer was applied before pouring the next block. The use of geopolymers was probably restricted to critical areas, like the mantle and the stones immediately behind, that tie in with the more roughly built inner core. But one solution simply led to another mystery, the purpose of that third strange red compound coating the outside of the pyramid. And for this the answer lay elsewhere. Some years ago, an ancient contract was found that detailed the requirements for a small but perfect pyramid, being built at the same time as the Great Pyramid. Historians were amazed that it was to be totally covered in polished brass sheeting, almost certainly gilded. Is the mysterious red glue found on the Great Pyramid confirmation that it too was once covered in mirrors of gold? The tests made by NASA of beamed energy systems showed that the pyramids closely matched the energy requirements predicted for flight applications from regional flight right through to space launches. There are now more than 45,000 pyramids on record. In a network that stretches right around the globe, their height and size varies enormously, but the general ratios and features remain remarkably constant. Though not all the sites shown here have pyramids, they do all have strong associations with visitations from gods. Local evidence of massive and sophisticated development in agriculture, trade and technology is also common, and larger complexes always have at least one great pyramid. The early visitors were obviously alien, and commonly wore some form of spacesuit. More recent visitors, rather significantly, are described as children of the gods, and are commonly tall, fair, bearded, blue-eyed and obviously human. From low-tech reflectors to the sophisticated waveguide channels found at Teotihuacan, different types of pyramid used different forms of beamed energy. Depending on pyramid size, the power was used to launch both air and spacecraft. The clever cryptograms left behind by these mysterious technocrats would seem deliberate clues. Perhaps we should look again at the ancient evidence. What other messages might they have left for us to find?